I'm here with Alessandro Piol. Alessandro is New York. He's a fellow graduate of Columbia University.
Big Apple.
Got his master's in computer science at Columbia before going up to Boston, where he got his, where he attended Harvard Business School. Alessandro is venture. Actually, he's second generation venture. His father ran venture at Olivetti, the multinational Italian technology company, and was known as the father of European technology. Alessandro knows technology. He started out as a computer programmer before heading to AT&T, where he co-founded AT&T Ventures. From there, he went on to Chancellor Capital Management, which was acquired by Invesco, and co-founded Vedanta Capital, a tech VC fund. And right now, he is in the process of raising a new seed and early stage fund focusing on enterprise and technology. Tech in the City, the making of New York's startup community, which Alessandro was co-author of. It was, and I'm saying this not because he's sitting next to me, but it's the most enjoyable read I've had in the last several years. I felt in part I was reading about friends. I felt in part I was reading about myself and others who've been in the New York tech community, you know, for the last 15, 20 years. It's a quick read. It is a fun read. It's really well done with some great anecdotes, and it's neatly divided into 3 sections: history, neighborhoods and companies, and themes, including advice on fundraising and starting a successful company, with an absolutely robust listing of resources as well. I would buy the book just for that list of resources, never mind the other chapters, each of which I would buy separately. If I were a city planner in charge of developing my city's technology industry, Tech in the City would be my first read. It is a blueprint for industry development. So please join me in welcoming Alessandro. Now, I take it...
With that introduction, I can go home now.
Alessandro, you know, what gave you the spark to write this? I mean, you know, I've written, you know, I've read a little, you know, articles maybe, you know, about this part of it, but this is just a wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm really flattered, first of all, and thank you all for being here. It actually happened almost by chance, because I have a friend who's my co-author, who's a journalist from Italy. She's been living here with her husband since 2000. Both journalists, both write for large newspapers in Italy. And she writes about business and technology, and I'm sort of one of her sources. When she writes about some technology topic, she calls me up and we have a chat and so on. And we're having dinner once about a little over a year ago, and I said, you know, we talk so often that we should write a book. And so she said, okay. And so I thought, oh shit. So we decided to have a brainstorming session, and of course I showed up, and I had all my, being a geek, I had all my ideas about maybe writing about, I don't know, cloud services or big data or some other stuff. And she looks at me and goes, no, look, let's write something that people want to read. And after we thought about it for a while, it sort of just appeared. It was sort of obvious that since we are New Yorkers, and I've been following the tech industry in New York for the past 20 years, and there's so much happening in New York that we really should write about this topic, and so write about the New York ecosystem and the tech startup community, and how give a historical perspective. One thing that occurred to me, having spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs in New York, is that sometimes people come here from other places, they don't have a context of what has been going on in New York. And so the idea was to provide the context for new people that come here, provide something that gives a historical perspective, that can be informational, but also inspirational for people, and also be some sort of guide for folks that come here and want to get a sense of how to start and where to look. So that's how we started off, and since Maria Teresa is a journalist and all she does is most of what she does is interviews, we went off and did about over 50 interviews with various people in New York, from VCs to entrepreneurs to members of the Bloomberg administration to educators and so on. And then we got together and we sat down and we sort of wrote the book. And so that's how it came about. But it's sort of also a way to, having been in New York for so long, to sort of give back to the community, because it's really something that honors this community and talks about how this came about, and also how we think it's here to stay.
What's real? Can I just show of hands? Who here was actually involved in the tech community in New York back in the 1990s during the .com era? Yeah, okay. There are a few. It's interesting because if I were to describe that period, it was like a magic show. Now you see it, now you don't. It quickly disappeared. Back, I think it was our third or fourth New York Venture Summit. I moderated a panel which I called "Is New York a Venture Capital?" So it was 2003, 2004. And on the panel, in fact, I met yesterday. He was one of the coaches at the session, Devin Parekh from Insight. And it was a clear no. And when I spoke to Devin yesterday, it was, I remember that. We had just one portfolio company that was in the New York metropolitan area. Now, at least 80% of our investments are in New York companies. What caused that? I mean, what caused the change? Is it just one factor, Alessandro? Is it a number of factors from disappearing and then just kind of starting again? Or is it just normal evolution?
Well, I would call it somewhat normal evolution. It maybe wasn't as obvious. I mean, I think what happened in the 90s was a little bit chaotic, and people got on the internet bandwagon, started building companies left and right, and very few actually built something that was sustainable. I mean, I think the poster child of the period probably for New York is probably DoubleClick. But what happened is you start. This is a question of building a community, okay? And to build a community takes time. If you look at Silicon Valley, it started in the 40s and 50s. If you look at Boston, it started in the late 50s. And it took decades and waves of innovation and technology before Silicon Valley became what it is. And New York, we are now second, third generation entrepreneurs. And it really takes experienced entrepreneurs to get there. So you start with building a community, and the community really comes from entrepreneurs. And then as things evolve and if you build some success, then everything else follows. And the investors show up, and the service companies show up, and so on. And then as you get to the next wave, as you get to as the community matures, then you get also people that have been successful, that want to give back to the community, they want to invest in the community, whether by building new companies or investing in new companies. And that's sort of an iterative process, and as you do that, it becomes larger and larger. Yeah,
in fact, I think you quoted Chris Dixon, who said, "Nothing works like success." That was the quote. That was a quote. So how is New York, or is New York, different from the other technology and venture hubs, Silicon Valley and Boston? Is there a distinction here?
Well, first of all, every place is different. So, Boston is different from Silicon Valley, and certainly both are different from New York. I think one thing we notice is that every place tries to builds on the domain expertise of the location. So, for instance, in New York, New York is the capital of financial services, of fashion, of media, publishing, and so on. And many of the companies, the first companies that came out, were really companies like DoubleClick, advertising, right? New York is the capital of advertising. And many of the other companies we see today are companies that build on those sectors. Why? Because A, customers are here. B, there is domain expertise you can draw in and build the companies, whatever the companies do, whether they disintermediate the sector or whether they build services to make sectors more efficient. So that's one characteristic. Also, because technology is not the only relevant industry in New York, unlike Silicon Valley, where everything is technology. Here you have more diversity, you have more, I think, culture, you have more cross-pollination of industries, and it makes it for a different environment.
Yeah. I mean, do you find the companies are more product-driven, business-driven here in New York than in the Valley?
So far, yes. They're more, in general, more business-driven because New York is a city of merchants, and I think it's to date it's been difficult to find in New York the heavy technology companies that you find in Silicon Valley. Because again, it's a generational question. It takes time for some of these things to mature. I mean, if I want to invest in a software-defined network company, I'm not going to find it here. I'm going to find it in Silicon Valley. On the other hand, if I want to invest in services for financial industry, maybe I'll find them here. So it's usually services here, many consumer services, e-retailing. You have certainly a lot of social type of companies that have been built as well. That has happened a little bit everywhere. So you don't have the heavy technology companies now. I think that may happen though, because well, you have one example, which is notable example is 10gen, which has a MongoDB product, which is a very popular database used for a lot of applications these days. But you also have a lot of research going on now in New York that may change the dynamics. For instance, you have Columbia, they launched the Institute for Data Sciences. NYU has a similar project. You have Cornell Technion campus that's going to do more technology deep type of application. So it takes time, but things may change.
And you know, the interesting part about that is you have academia now, you know, kind of invested in helping build and sustain.
You have academia.
Is that necessary to have a successful venture capital?
I think academia is important. If you look at all the successful ecosystems that have all been built around Stanford, MIT, Technion in Israel. So having a center of a talent center is important. Sometimes the talent comes from other corporations, right? So, for instance, years ago, Boulder was the capital of storage. I mean, I remember taking many trips there to look at storage companies. That's because the first storage technology was born there, and there were all sorts of spin-offs afterwards. So that's the. I forget what the question was now.
It was just in terms of academia.
The academia. The other thing is that in New York now you have now finally there is a sense of competition among the universities, because when Cornell and Technion got the nod from Bloomberg to build a new campus, all of a sudden Columbia and NYU have woken up, and now they're starting to do all sorts of stuff. So it's a good thing. You know, academia is important. Universities train talent. There is not enough talent in New York. There is, if you look at some of the websites that track job posts, you notice there are thousands of job openings for engineers in New York, and there is not enough, but things are happening from the universities. Yeah. Then there is companies like Google that now have over 3,000 people here in New York, of which 2,000 are engineers. They're bringing talent from all over the East Coast. So, you know, good dynamics are taking place, but again, it takes time.
Yeah. Now, and, you know, back in 2000, this was just as we were reaching the pinnacle of the .com boom. I wrote an article that New York has a competitive advantage where distance to customers is measured in blocks, not airline segments, and not miles. And of all people, I got a telephone call from Jim Cramer, you know, from Mad Money. Back then, it was his Street.com, and he called me, and I knew him socially. He said, "I disagree with you, Davis. You know, the worst mistake I ever made was starting Street.com in New York. I can't get a place. You know, rent is through the roof. I can't get talent. People are just, they want to get paid too much, and I can't find enough technology people. Can this be overcome? I mean, you briefly mentioned, at least on the talent side, we have, the universities and institutions, and probably computer sciences is probably one of the most popular majors now. But can those two things, space? I've had clients, Midtown South, 5 years ago it was $20 a square foot, then it was $30 a square foot, then it was $40 a square foot, then it was $50 a square foot and gone. Can we overcome that?
Well, on the talent side, again, it's a question of time. Right now, talent is expensive because there is not enough. So it's all demand and supply. And people, I know companies that maybe start a development center elsewhere because they cannot find enough talent here. On the space thing, I mean, things are very different now than they were 15 years ago when even to build a software company, you had to have a big office space, a computer room, servers, all that stuff. Today, to build a company, you need a bunch of guys at the table and a few laptops. And that also decreases the amount of space you need. So now you have all these workspaces, WeWork, and all these other places in New York where people can just go and camp out and do and just build a business that way. So the need for space is less. It's still expensive. So as you grow the company, I think the biggest need is when your company goes beyond 15, 20 people. You cannot really stay in a shared workspace anymore. You have to find that size space. But the community is expanding too. So today it's Manhattan and Brooklyn, and Brooklyn just part of Brooklyn and Long Island City, but it's sort of going into Queens, going further into Brooklyn, and in other places. Eventually, the Bronx, Staten Island, and so on will be homes for startups. And I think as you grow up, you'll need to go find where the places where the space is a little cheaper. And,
right. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. You mentioned about the cost of building a business, coming down significantly. You don't need the service. You can rent the, your infrastructure. But in the book, you also write about going from analog dollars to digital dimes, and now with mobile digital pennies. Is that type of business plan sustainable?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, all right? Because as you move to mobile devices, then it's a little harder to advertise and do some other things. But on the other hand, I think Cisco published a study a few months ago where they said that by the end of this year, there's going to be more mobile devices than the population of the Earth. So knowing that some people will have more than one, obviously, because some certainly will have zero. So when you have like billions of devices out there, even if you make a little bit for each, it's still an interesting money. And I think the story still has to be told, and there are, I think, many ways to make money. And as people rely more and more on mobile devices, there will be Southern will figure out how to make things work.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. One of my fears, anytime conditions get hot, are we in a bubble, and is there going to be a big correction? Any sense of that with what's happening in the community now? And
well, there's a lot of money being invested by angels in the early stages. So seed rounds, lots of companies have been started, okay? And at the late stage of investing, there is always a lot of money, maybe less than a few years ago, but there's still a lot of money. Where there is a big funnel is really in the Series A round, so what people call it the Series A crunch. And that becomes a good filter, however. I mean, it's maybe, on one end, a bad thing for many entrepreneurs that can raise money, but on the other hand is a good filter for a company. So, there is a number of companies being started, partially also because it costs less to build a company, so it takes less money to start one. But we all know that very few of them will get to success. So I don't know if I call it a bubble, certainly a bubble at the seed level, or a large number of companies at seed level. But what happened? If you look back in the late '90s, what was happening? There was lots of money at every stage of finances. So companies would go from beginning to IPO, raising tons of money, and then unfortunately they realized they didn't have a business. Now people are much more cautious about the type of companies they invest in.
Right, and having that business, a true business plan and things like that. Obviously, biggest news, New York, last few weeks, Tumblr, $1 billion. Is that obviously has to have a positive effect, on the community?
Yeah, it has a positive effect because there is money that comes into the community. So some of the management team of Tumblr, and the investors in Tumblr made a lot of money, and hopefully some of this money will get channeled back into the community. It's a pity at one level, though, that I think what New York needs is to see some large companies being built and going public.
Yeah,
they're going in New York, so that's still missing. Tumblr could have been one of them. Yeah. Unfortunately, if you look at DoubleClick, that was absorbed eventually by Google. Tumblr is now part of Yahoo. That will be nice one day to have a big company that goes public and stays here and starts acquiring other companies. That's when New York probably will have.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good sign there. Let me open up the floor. I think we have, Joe, a couple minutes. We can have some questions from the audience. Anybody, questions for Alessandro? If not, let me just, without Alessandro, I thought you had a fabulous chapter on advice to entrepreneurs. Was there a question somebody had?
Lots of technologies are out there, sir. My name's Gabriel Joseph from CC Advertising. I'm one of the presenters today. How important is the data, consumer data, behind any of the technologies that are out there in regard to investments that you and your cohorts consider?
Oh, I think it's very important. I mean, in fact, my focus is very much data-driven in terms of investments. And I think data is changing the way decisions are made. So people are not making decisions based on hypotheses to be proven now. They are just taking empirical data and just figuring out what that means. And they come with sometimes some surprising conclusions. So I think the ball is already rolling there, and people are trying to figure out how to go through data and make decisions based on that. And still a long way to go. At least that's my hope, because I'm raising a fund to do that. So.
Yeah, right now everybody's talking about mobile. Outside of mobile, what do you think is the next up-and-coming technology that's going to be adopted?
Well, I think mobile still has a long way to go. So we've seen mobile applied to consumers for the past several years now. Yeah, I think more and more enterprises now are trying to figure out how to use mobile and how to use BYOD, bring your own devices to work in a secure and effective manner. So I think there is a whole enterprise side of the equation that needs to be developed on the mobile side. And there's still a lot to do in mobile in general. My hypothesis is that there is a lot of work to be done on the enterprise side in terms of renewing the corporation, making it more nimble, making it more connected, using mobile and social technology that are being adopted by the consumer. So the consumerization of the enterprise in a way, and also the use of data, as I was just saying before. I think that's also a big area where a lot more needs to be understood. So, I mean, those are the areas that are of interest to me, where I think there are big opportunities. I'm sure there are others.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I was just going to finish up, Alessandro. You had a fabulous chapter in the book at the end, Advice to Entrepreneurs. If you can just crystallize a few thoughts that because I just thought it was terrific.
Oh, Chris, I don't remember. Okay, it's a conclusion of the book. Well, it occurred to me, that's another funny thing because, Maria Teresa, my co-author, and her husband, I was writing the conclusion of the book. She wrote the introduction, wrote the conclusion, then we worked together on the rest. So I was writing my thoughts, and they told me, well, it would be nice if you put together some suggestions for entrepreneurs. And I thought, oh my God, that's so okay. I mean, everybody does that. Why do I? No, please, write some. Okay, so finally I wrote this 12 thing, a list of 12 things to think about, and unbelievably, everybody comes up to me and mentions that. I guess everybody got to the end of the book, yeah. But it's. I don't think any of them are. I mean, I view them as somewhat obvious, but I can understand how maybe it's useful things to think about. Yeah. So really has to do. And by the way, some of these things I borrowed also from other people that write blogs. Fred Wilson and other folks, which I refer to in the book in that chapter. But it's really some suggestions about if you start a business, things to think about, and how to maintain your humbleness even in when things starting to go well. I mean, starting a business is something that people that really want to do can do, but it's a long journey. So there are a lot of things that you cannot take anything for granted until you get to the finish line, if there is a finish line. So, but there is a number. I guess NYU even put them on its website after I went to speak there. So
I think it's fabulous. And to the entrepreneurs in the audience, you have one shot at making a good impression, and you want to go in prepared. You want to go in, thinking, like the investor. And again, I think just that listing at the end was well worth, the price of the book. There are courses, taught at entrepreneurial studies, at universities.
And since you mentioned the price, I just want to say before I forget that we, for this conference, for the next 24 hours, we lower the price of the Kindle version of the book. So you can get it really cheap now if you're interested. Paper version, the cost is controlled by Amazon. So
I tell everybody after this, as soon as this conference is over, go to the closest Borders. And then I realized Borders not around. But you do have your Kindle and you do have Amazon. Again, just an absolutely, this is perfect timing too. Summer reading, you want to have fun, and when you can combine fun with really learning a lot, no better combination.
I swear I did not pay him.
Yeah, I did. Please join me in thanking Alessandro just for a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.